I couldn't breathe. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white as I sped through the dark streets toward Meadowbrook Care Facility. The call had come at 10:47 p.m. I remember checking the clock because my heart had stopped for a second when I saw the facility's number flash across my phone screen. "Mrs. Chen, your daughter had an episode. She's asking for you." That's all they said. An episode. What kind of episode? Sarah had been at Meadowbrook for 2 weeks now, ever since the doctors finally convinced me she needed round-the-clock observation. My 35-year-old daughter, who'd built a successful graphic design company from nothing, who could remember every client's color preferences and every deadline without writing anything down, who used to call me 3 times a day just to chat, now couldn't remember what she'd eaten for breakfast. Early-onset dementia, they called it. Rare, they said. Tragic, they whispered. But I knew better. A mother knows. The facility's parking lot was nearly empty at this hour. I half ran toward the entrance, my sensible shoes slapping against the pavement. The automatic doors seemed to take forever to open. Inside, the reception area glowed with that harsh fluorescent light that makes everything look like a crime scene. "I'm here for Sarah Chen," I said to the night receptionist, barely getting the words out. "Room 347. They called me about Mrs. Chen." A man's voice, calm but urgent, came from behind me. I turned. A younger man in casual clothes, maybe 40, with tired eyes and a Meadowbrook ID badge clipped to his belt, stood blocking my path to the elevators. "I'm David Reeves, one of the hospice counselors here," he said quietly. "Before you go up to see your daughter, I need you to come with me. Please." "What?" "No, I need to see Sarah right now. They said she had an episode. Mrs. Chen." He stepped closer, his voice dropping even lower. "I need you to trust me. Come to the observation room first. There's something you need to see before you go into Sarah's room." The way he said it made my blood run cold. Not something you should see. Something you need to see. I followed him down a side hallway I'd never noticed before, past the family lounge and the medication room. He stopped at a door marked staff only and pulled out a key card. "What is this about?" I demanded. "If something's wrong with Sarah, I should be with her. Your daughter is resting. She's stable." He opened the door and gestured for me to enter. But she's not alone. The room was small and dark, with a large window taking up most of one wall. It took me a moment to realize it was one-way glass, and through it I could see directly into Sarah's room next door. My daughter lay in the hospital bed, eyes closed, her once vibrant auburn hair limp against the pillow. She looked so small, so fragile. This woman who used to hike 10 miles on weekends, who'd climbed Half Dome in Yosemite just 3 years ago. But Sarah wasn't alone. My son-in-law Marcus sat in the chair beside her bed, his phone in one hand. And standing near the window, her back to us, was a woman I'd seen around the facility before. Teresa. Something. The private caregiver Marcus had insisted on hiring 2 months ago, claiming the facility staff wasn't attentive enough. "Why are you showing me this?" I whispered to David, but he held up one finger. "Wait." Marcus stood up, glanced at Sarah's sleeping form, then walked to the door. He checked the hallway, then closed the door most of the way. Not completely shut, but enough for privacy. Teresa turned around. Even through the window, I could see the coldness in her expression. Nothing like the sweet, concerned caregiver act she put on whenever I visited. "How much longer until the neurologist declares her incompetent?" Marcus's voice came through clearly. David must have left some kind of audio connection open. My heart stopped beating. I actually felt it stop, then restart with a painful thud. "Another month of the medication regimen," Teresa replied, making air quotes with her fingers. "Dr. Morrison is already documenting the progression. Once she fails the next cognitive assessment, we can move forward with the full conservatorship paperwork." "And the business transfers?" "Already drafted. Your lawyer friend Jim has been very helpful. Once she's declared legally incompetent, you'll have full power of attorney over everything. The company, the house, all her accounts. Sarah signed those preliminary documents 3 months ago when she first started having symptoms, remember? She thought she was just setting up emergency backup plans in case the dementia got worse." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. She made it so easy. "Marcus, I need you to help me with financial planning. What if I get worse? What if I can't run the company?" Like she was handing me a blueprint. My hand flew to my mouth, but no sound came out. David's hand gripped my shoulder, steadying me. The pills are working perfectly, Teresa continued. The combination of benzodiazepines and those antipsychotics creates exactly the symptoms we need: confusion, memory loss, personality changes. And because they're mixed with her actual prescribed medication, no one questions why she's taking pills. They just think her regular doctors are trying different treatments. What about the mother? Marcus asked. Linda's been suspicious from the start. Always watching, always asking questions. Linda's a retired schoolteacher living on a pension. Who's going to believe her over doctors, over medical documentation, over you, the devoted husband? Teresa moved closer to Marcus. Too close. Besides, once Sarah's in long-term psychiatric care, Linda won't have unrestricted visiting rights. You'll control that too. My legs started to shake. David pulled over a chair and guided me into it, but I couldn't take my eyes off the window. Marcus checked his watch. The night nurse does rounds in 15 minutes. You should go. When this is over, Teresa said, her voice changing to something softer, more intimate. We need to talk about us, about making our situation more permanent. She kissed him. My son-in-law, my daughter's husband of 3 years, kissed this woman while Sarah lay unconscious in a bed 5 feet away. When Teresa left, Marcus sat back down beside Sarah's bed. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling, completely casual. Like he hadn't just discussed destroying his wife's entire life. Like he was just a concerned husband keeping vigil. I don't know how long I sat there in that dark room. My whole body had gone numb. How long have you known? I finally managed to whisper to David. 3 weeks, he said quietly. I've worked in hospice and long-term care for 15 years, Mrs. Chen. I've seen hundreds of families, some at their absolute best, pulling together in crisis. Others at their worst, fighting over inheritance before the patient is even gone. But Marcus, something about him never sat right with me. Why didn't you tell someone? The doctors? The police? I tried. I talked to the facility director, to Dr. Morrison. They looked at me like I was crazy. Marcus is the perfect devoted husband. He visits every day. He hired extra care. He cooperates with all the medical staff. And Sarah's cognitive decline is documented by multiple doctors. Without proof, I'm just a counselor making wild accusations that could get me fired and sued. So why tell me? David pulled a small plastic bag from his pocket. Inside were several pills. Because last week, I noticed Marcus bringing Sarah her medication himself sometimes. He said he was just helping out, making sure she didn't miss doses. But when I checked the pill bottles, these weren't what Dr. Morrison prescribed. The labels match, but the pills don't. He handed me another bag. These are what Dr. Morrison actually prescribed. Compare them. Even in the dim light, I could see the difference. The shape, the markings, everything was different. I had them tested at a private lab, David continued. Cost me $300 out of my own pocket. The pills Marcus has been giving, Sarah, contain benzodiazepines and risperidone. Strong doses. Those drugs, taken together over time, especially when someone doesn't actually need them, can create every symptom Sarah's been showing. Confusion, memory loss, motor problems, personality changes. That's why you brought me here. You needed a witness. I needed someone who would believe me and who has standing to take action. You're her mother, and I needed you to hear it directly from them so you'd know I wasn't making this up. My hand trembled as I reached for my purse. I'm calling the police right now. Wait. David's hand stopped me. It's your word and mine against Marcus and the medical establishment. We need more. More? You just showed me. I showed you people talking. A good lawyer will say it was hypothetical, that we misunderstood, that you're a grief-stricken mother making wild accusations. We need documentation, evidence that will hold up. I stared at him. How? Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She was Sarah's primary physician before all this started. She's who referred Sarah to the specialists when the symptoms first appeared. I called her yesterday after I got the lab results back. She's agreed to see you tomorrow morning. She needs to hear what you heard tonight. And she needs to order independent blood work on Sarah, testing for drugs that shouldn't be in her system. Tomorrow? Sarah's being poisoned right now. Sarah's not in immediate danger. The drugs Marcus is giving her are meant to incapacitate, not kill. Tonight, he'll give her the sleeping medication like always. She'll sleep through the night. Tomorrow morning, before Marcus arrives for his usual 10 a.m. visit, Dr. Rodriguez will come here and draw blood. I'll make sure of it. And if something happens tonight? If he changes his mind? I'll be watching. I'm on night shift. I'll personally check on Sarah every hour. If anything changes, I'll call you immediately. I promise. My mind was racing, but through the fog of shock and horror, I realized something. Why are you doing this? You could lose your job. Marcus could sue you. David was quiet for a long moment. 5 years ago, my mother was in a facility like this. Early Alzheimer's. My brother had power of attorney. He was supposed to manage her care, her finances. Instead, he systematically drained her accounts and put her in the cheapest care he could find. By the time I realized what was happening, she'd developed bed sores from neglect, and he'd taken everything she'd saved for 40 years. She died 3 months later. He looked at Sarah through the window. I reported him. I had evidence. But the system moved too slowly. By the time anyone took me seriously, it was too late. I swore I'd never let that happen again if I could help it. When I saw what was happening with Sarah, when I started noticing the discrepancies, he shook his head. If I'm wrong, I lose my job. But if I'm right and I say nothing, I lose my conscience. And your daughter loses everything. I found myself nodding. Then I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? David asked. You said we need evidence. I'm going to get it. I opened my phone's voice recorder app. Do you still have audio access to Sarah's room? Yes, but... Good. I'm coming back here tomorrow night. Same time. And I want to hear everything that gets said in that room. I hit record. But first, can you replay what we just heard? From the beginning. David stared at me for a moment. Then a small smile crossed his face. You're a lot tougher than Marcus gives you credit for. I taught 8th grade English for 35 years. I've dealt with plenty of manipulative people who underestimated me. I steadied my phone. Now please, replay the audio. I want every word documented. He did. I recorded the entire conversation, my hand shaking but holding steady enough. When it was over, I saved the file and emailed it to myself, then to my lawyer, Janet Colby, with the subject line, Urgent. Listen to this immediately. Now what? David asked. Now I go up and see my daughter like any mother would after getting called in the middle of the night. I act normal. I don't let Marcus suspect anything. I stood up, forcing my legs to support me. And tomorrow, we take this to Dr. Rodriguez and figure out how to save Sarah before it's too late. Are you sure you can face him? Knowing what you know? I thought about Sarah at 6 years old, scraping her knee while learning to ride a bike. I'd known she was hurt before I even saw the blood. I'd felt it, that inexplicable mother's knowledge. At 15, I'd known she'd had her heart broken the moment she walked through the door, before she said a word. At 22, I'd known she'd gotten the job she wanted before she called to tell me. And I'd known from the first time Marcus brought Sarah home to meet me 3.5 years ago that something about him wasn't right. I couldn't explain it. He was charming, successful, attentive to Sarah. Everything a mother should want for her daughter. But there was something in his eyes when he looked at Sarah's house, her car, her life, something calculating. I'd ignored my instinct because Sarah loved him, because I wanted to be the non-interfering mother, because I'd told myself I was being paranoid. Never again. I can face him, I said. Watch me. I left the observation room and took the elevator up to the 3rd floor. My footsteps echoed in the quiet hallway. Through Sarah's door, which was still slightly ajar, I could hear the television playing softly. I knocked gently and pushed the door open. Sarah? Sweetheart? Marcus jumped up from his chair, phone clutched in his hand. He looked startled for just a second. Then his expression shifted to concerned relief. The transformation was so smooth it made my skin crawl. Linda! Thank God you're here. He came toward me, arms outstretched for a hug. I forced myself not to recoil. They called me about an episode. Is she okay? She's sleeping now. She got confused earlier, very agitated. Didn't know where she was. Didn't recognize the nurses. They had to give her something to calm her down. He gestured to Sarah's sleeping form. The doctor says these episodes might become more frequent. Every word out of his mouth was a lie. The nurses hadn't called him. He'd probably been the one to call me. Or had Teresa do it, creating a reason for my presence so it wouldn't seem strange when I showed up. I should have been called sooner. I said, moving past him to Sarah's bedside. My daughter looked peaceful in sleep, but I could see the changes these past few months had wrought. She'd lost weight. Her skin had a greyish tinge. The vibrant, energetic woman who'd celebrated her 35th birthday just 6 months ago with a weekend trip to wine country had been replaced by this fragile shadow. But she was still my Sarah, still my baby girl. I bent down and kissed her forehead. "I'm here, sweetheart," I whispered. "Mama's here, and I'm going to fix this. I promise." "The doctors say we need to prepare ourselves," Marcus said from behind me. His voice had that practiced sadness. "Her decline is accelerating. They're recommending we start looking at long-term psychiatric care facilities." I wanted to scream. I wanted to lunge at him and claw his eyes out. Instead, I turned slowly and looked at him with a mother's exhausted concern. "We'll do whatever Sarah needs," I said. Each word cost me, but I hope it doesn't come to that. She's so young. Maybe she'll stabilize. We can hope. Marcus checked his watch. "It's almost midnight. You should go home and get some rest. I'll stay with her." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. I softened my voice. "I mean, you've been here all day. You must be exhausted. I'll stay. You go home." For just a second, something flickered in his eyes. Suspicion? Irritation? Then the concerned husband mask slipped back into place. "Are you sure?" "I don't mind. I'm sure. Please, Marcus, let me have this time with my daughter. I need it." He hesitated, then nodded. "Of course. Thank you, Linda. Call me if anything changes." "I will." I watched him gather his jacket, his phone, his tablet. So normal, so ordinary. As he passed Sarah's bedside, he paused and touched her hand gently. "Sleep well, baby," he murmured. The act was perfect. If I hadn't seen what I'd seen, heard what I'd heard, I would have thought he was a devoted husband facing a nightmare. When he was gone, I sank into the chair beside Sarah's bed and took her hand. It was warm but limp. I could feel her pulse, steady and strong. "I know, baby," I whispered. "I know what he's doing to you, and I'm going to stop it. I promise you, Sarah. I promise." I stayed there through the night, holding my daughter's hand. David checked in 3 times, each time with the excuse of routine rounds. Each time his eyes met mine with an unspoken question. "You okay?" Each time I nodded, because I had to be okay. Sarah needed me to be okay. At 7 a.m., just after the shift change, Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived. I'd taught her daughter Maria in 8th grade 15 years ago. Elena and I had met at countless parent-teacher conferences, had chatted at school events. When I'd called her at 6:30 that morning, waking her up with my frantic explanation of what I'd witnessed, she'd listened to the recording I'd sent her, then said simply, "I'll be there in an hour." She came into Sarah's room with David, her medical bag in hand and fury in her eyes. "Mrs. Chen," she said formally for the benefit of any staff who might be listening. "I'm here to run some additional tests on Sarah. Routine blood work, nothing to worry about." I stepped back and let her work. She drew multiple vials of blood while Sarah slept on, still heavily sedated from whatever Marcus had given her the night before. When she was done, she labelled each vial carefully. "These will go to an independent lab, not the hospital's," she told me quietly. "We'll have results by tomorrow. I'm testing for benzodiazepines, antipsychotics, anything that shouldn't be in her system at these levels." "What if the tests confirm it?" I asked. "What then?" "Then I call the police and report suspected poisoning and medical fraud. I pull all of Sarah's medical records and document every inconsistency. And I use my medical license to get an emergency hearing to suspend Marcus's power of attorney and appoint you as temporary guardian. Can you do that? If there's evidence of abuse..." "Yes. It's not easy and it's not fast, but it can be done." She packed up her medical bag. "David told me Marcus usually comes around 10 a.m. I nodded. "Good. I want to be here when he arrives. I want to see his reaction when I tell him I've ordered independent tests." The next few hours crawled by. Sarah woke up around 8, confused and disoriented. She didn't recognize me at first, which broke my heart all over again. But after a few minutes, something cleared in her eyes. "Mom?" Her voice was hoarse. "Why are you here?" "You had a difficult night, sweetheart. They called me." I don't remember." She squeezed her eyes shut. I hate this, Mom. I hate not remembering things. Sometimes I wake up and I don't know what day it is or why I'm here. It's like my brain is full of fog and I can't push through it. I held her hand tighter. Because of course she didn't know what day it was. Because Marcus had been drugging her into confusion for months. The doctor is running some new tests, I told her. Maybe they'll figure out what's going on. Where's Marcus? The question nearly broke me. He was here last night. He'll be back soon. He's been so good through all this, Sarah said, her words slightly slurred. I don't know what I'd do without him. He handles everything now. The business, the bills, everything. I can't even remember passwords anymore. Of course she couldn't. Because he'd been systematically erasing her capacity to function independently so he could take control of everything she'd built. At 9:45, Dr. Rodriguez returned with David. At 10:03, Marcus arrived, carrying coffee and a bag from Sarah's favorite bakery. Linda, you're still here. He smiled, but I could see the calculation behind it. You should have called me. I would have come back sooner. Dr. Rodriguez wanted to see Sarah this morning, I said. Run some additional tests. That's when he noticed Elena. His smile never faltered, but something shifted in his posture. Dr. Rodriguez. It's been a while. I thought the neurologists had taken over Sarah's case. I'm still her primary physician, Mr. Chen, and I have some concerns about her treatment protocol. Elena's voice was cool and professional. I've ordered comprehensive blood work to check for any medication interactions or unexpected substances in her system. Unexpected substances? Marcus's laugh was easy, but his knuckles had turned white around the coffee cup. What do you mean? Sometimes medications can build up in a patient's system, especially when they're taking multiple prescriptions, or sometimes patients receive medications that weren't properly documented. I'm sure you understand the need for thoroughness. Of course. Whatever helps Sarah. The results will be back tomorrow. Until then, I'm recommending that Sarah receive all medications directly from the nursing staff, properly documented. No exceptions. But I've been helping with her medication regimen. The nurses approved. I'm sure they did. But given Sarah's deteriorating condition, I want to ensure strict protocols are followed. I'm sure you understand. Marcus looked at me. I kept my expression blank, concerned mother only. Of course, he said again. Whatever's best for Sarah. But as he bent to kiss Sarah's forehead, I saw his hand shake slightly. He knew. Maybe not that we had evidence, but he knew something had shifted. The net was closing. That evening, Marcus left at his usual 7 p.m. Teresa had mysteriously called in sick, David informed me. Not surprising. I went home finally, exhausted but wired with anxious energy. My little house felt too quiet, too empty. Every room reminded me of Sarah at different ages. Her high school graduation photo on the mantel. The painting she'd given me for Mother's Day 5 years ago hanging in the hallway. The mug she'd made in a pottery class when she was 12, now holding pens on my desk. My phone rang at 1 p.m. Unknown number. Don't do this, Linda. Marcus's voice, all pretense, dropped. Whatever you think you know, you're wrong. Am I? Sarah's sick. She needs proper care. I'm trying to help her. By drugging her? By stealing her company? Silence. Long enough that I thought he'd hung up. Then, you can't prove anything. Can't I? It's your word against mine. Against doctors, against medical records. You're a retired teacher who's distraught about her daughter's illness. Who do you think people will believe? We'll see. If you pursue this, I will destroy you. Legally, financially, every way I can. I have resources. I have lawyers. What do you have? I have the truth. And I have a recording of you and Teresa discussing how you've been poisoning my daughter to steal everything she owns. Another long silence. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder. That recording won't hold up in court. You obtained it without my consent. I was in a public facility, in an observation room that the facility provided. I recorded voices that came through an audio system the facility installed. And even if it doesn't hold up in court, I wonder what the police will think, what Sarah's business partners will think, what your employer will think when I send them a copy. You bitch. No, I'm a mother. There's a difference. I hung up. My hands shook so badly I had to set the phone down. But I felt something else too. Power. For months, I'd watched helplessly as my daughter deteriorated, as Marcus controlled every aspect of her life, as doctors told me there was nothing anyone could do. For months I'd felt weak and old and useless. Not anymore. The next day, Dr. Rodriguez called at noon. The blood work came back. Sarah has high levels of benzodiazepines and risperidone in her system, levels consistent with regular dosing over an extended period. Neither drug was prescribed by any of her doctors. What now? Now I call the police. And I file for an emergency guardianship hearing. Can you meet me at the courthouse at 3? I could. I did. By 6 p.m. I had temporary guardianship of Sarah. By 7 p.m., 2 police detectives were at Meadowbrook interviewing David and reviewing facility logs. By 8 p.m., Marcus was arrested in the parking lot of the facility, still carrying that bag from Sarah's favorite bakery. They found him with Teresa's number called 17 times in the past 2 hours. They found emails discussing the transfer of Sarah's company assets. They found the pills David had tested, still in Marcus's car. They found search histories on his laptop about cognitive decline symptoms and medications that cause them. The case against him was overwhelming. Sarah started recovering within days. The fog began to lift. Her memory improved. Her energy returned. It wasn't instant, doctor, Rodriguez warned. The drugs had done real damage that would take time to heal. But Sarah was young and strong, and she'd been on the drugs for months, not years. 3 weeks later, Sarah came home from the facility. Not to the house she'd shared with Marcus, but to my little house, the same house she'd grown up in. We sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd bandaged her scraped knees and helped her with homework and talked her through her first heartbreak. She cried for hours that first night, mourning not just the husband who'd betrayed her, but the time stolen from her life. How did you know? She asked finally. Everyone believed him. The doctors, the nurses, everyone. How did you know? I thought about that moment when she was 6 and I'd known she'd scraped her knee before I saw the blood. When she was 15 and I'd known her heart was broken before she spoke. When she was 22 and I'd known she'd gotten her dream job before she called. Because I'm your mother, I said simply. And a mother always knows. The trial was long and brutal. Marcus's lawyers tried everything. They claimed the recording was inadmissible. They claimed David and I had conspired. They claimed Sarah's recovery was coincidental. They even tried to claim that the pills were Sarah's, that she'd been taking them herself, and I was a delusional mother making accusations. But the evidence was overwhelming. The lab reports, David's documentation, the emails between Marcus and Teresa, the search history, the financial documents showing exactly how Marcus planned to transfer Sarah's assets. And most damning of all, Marcus's confession to the police. When confronted with everything, he'd tried to make a deal, admitting to drugging Sarah but claiming it wasn't his idea, that Teresa had convinced him to do it, that he'd loved Sarah but just got in over his head financially. The jury didn't buy it. They convicted him on multiple counts: fraud, assault, attempted theft, conspiracy. Teresa got similar charges. Marcus got 15 years. Teresa got 12. That was 8 months ago now. Sarah has slowly rebuilt her life. Her company survived, though it took a lot of work to untangle the damage Marcus had done to the finances. She goes to therapy twice a week. She's learning to trust again, though it's hard. She moved back into her house 3 months ago, but she calls me every morning and every night. Some days are harder than others. Some days the trauma feels too fresh, too raw. But she's here. She's alive. She's herself again. Last week, she started painting again. She hadn't painted since before Marcus, she told me. He'd always criticized her art, called it a waste of time when she should be focusing on the business. She set up an easel in the spare bedroom of her house and invited me over to see the first piece she'd completed. It was me. A portrait from that first night at Meadowbrook, my hand pressed against the observation window, my face a mixture of horror and determination. "You saved my life, Mom," she said quietly. "When everyone else believed the lie, you knew the truth. Even when you had no proof, even when everyone said you were wrong, you knew. How did you know?" I wrapped my arm around my daughter, my beautiful, strong, surviving daughter. "Because I'm your mother," I said again. "And I will always fight for you, even when the world says I'm wrong. Especially when the world says I'm wrong." I think about that night a lot. That moment when David stopped me before I could go to Sarah's room. That moment when I heard Marcus's voice through the glass, casually discussing how to destroy my daughter's life. I think about how close we came to losing everything. If David hadn't been paying attention, if I hadn't trusted him, if I'd listened to all the people who told me I was being paranoid, that Marcus was a good husband, that Sarah's illness was just a tragedy we all had to accept. I think about Marcus's words on the phone. What do you have? And I know the answer now, more clearly than ever. I have a mother's instinct which never fails. I have the willingness to act when everyone else says to accept. I have the strength that comes from loving someone more than I love my own comfort or safety or peace. I have everything that matters. And Marcus, despite all his plans, all his manipulation, all his careful plotting, never understood that. He saw a foolish old woman on a pension, someone who could be dismissed, someone who didn't matter. He forgot that old women built this world. We taught its children, we fought its battles, we survived its wars, and we will burn it all down to save the people we love. Never underestimate a mother. It's the last mistake you'll ever make. Sarah's company is thriving now. She hired new staff, including a security consultant to review all financial practices. She's dating again, carefully, slowly. She's learning to trust her own instincts, just as I've always trusted mine. And David? He still works at Meadowbrook. They tried to fire him after the scandal, claiming he'd breached protocol by involving me. But the facilities board overruled the decision when the story hit the news. Now he teaches seminars on recognizing and reporting elder abuse and patient exploitation. He saved my daughter's life. I'll never forget that. Last month, on the first anniversary of that terrible night, Sarah and I drove to the ocean. We sat on the beach and watched the sunset, not talking, just being together. When it got dark, Sarah turned to me. Do you remember when I was little and had nightmares? You'd sit with me until I fell back asleep. You'd tell me you'd never let anything bad happen to me. I remember. I stopped believing that when I got older. I thought you were just saying what parents say to comfort scared children. I thought you couldn't really protect me from the world. And now? Sarah took my hand, the same way I'd held hers through all those long nights at Meadowbrook. Now I know better. You really meant it. You really would burn the world down for me. Always, I said. Always and forever. We sat there until the stars came out, a mother and daughter who'd survived the worst betrayal imaginable, who'd looked into the face of evil and refused to blink, who'd fought when fighting seemed hopeless and won when winning seemed impossible. Because that's what mothers do. We protect, we fight, we endure, and we never, ever give up. That's the truth they don't tell you in fairy tales. The princess doesn't need a prince to save her. She needs a mother who'll face down dragons with nothing but love and rage, and an unshakable knowledge that no one gets to hurt her child. And I did, and I'd do it again, and again, as many times as it takes. Because I'm Linda Chen. I'm a retired 8th grade teacher. I'm 62 years old. I live on a pension. And I'm a mother, which means I'm the most dangerous person Marcus ever crossed. He just didn't know it until it was too late.